Welcome back to another video. If you've been watching my channel lately, you've noticed I've been making use of this NotebookLM feature by Google to create podcasts of my back catalog. But before I started doing this and releasing these on my own channel for my own stuff, I wanted to see how the AI podcast reviews did for channels I was watching. Were they fair and objective summaries? Because let's be honest, I, as the content creator for Emmaus Road Productions, it is hard for me to be totally objective and without bias towards my own content. So when I upload video content from another creator, do I agree? Is it something like what I would agree with? And I've released this, or I've let a few channels know that I've done this, and Lee Brainerd, his wife over at Soothkeep, actually liked the podcast review and asked me to release it on my channel. So this is Lee Brainerd's material. I'm going to put up his slides that he uses in these presentations. You'll see that I'm using two resources. Both videos are titled The Order of Revelation. One is a live stream that he did about a month ago, and the other one is a 30-minute video he did about a year ago. What I like about these videos, and I highly encourage you not to just listen to this AI podcast. Let this AI podcast be an appetizer to encourage you to watch the full video. Because what Brother Lee does is he takes Revelation and all these judgments. The typical way these are interpreted is they happen chronologically. First one thing happens, then another, then another, then another. Like everything stops from the previous one. That always bugged me. What Brother Lee does is says, wait a second. No, look at the white horse of Revelation. We believe it's the Antichrist. The Antichrist isn't going to just come and go away and then the next horse show up. No, it's going to continue. So his teaching says, hey, instead of looking at these as distinct events with a beginning and end, and then the next one comes, what if they all stack upon one another? And that's what this video series is about. So I hope you enjoy this. Please consider liking and subscribing. I'll put a link at the end card and in the description below where you can check out Brother Lee's channel. I highly recommend him if you're interested in Bible prophecy and you want someone who's going to tell you what's really going on without a whole bunch of speculative hype. This is a channel that's well worth your subscription. So I hope you enjoy this.
All right. Welcome to another deep dive. This time we're going into the book of Revelation, specifically the order of events.
Okay.
And, this has always been a really hot topic because there's so much disagreement, even among, people who really believe in the Bible and in the truth of Revelation. There's still a lot of disagreement about what happens when.
Absolutely.
And you've brought us a collection of videos by Lee Brainerd.
Right.
And you basically are interested in how he differs from other interpretations and what prophetic complications is solved.
What problems does
problems
solve with prophecy.
So let's get into it. So what's interesting is that he uses the dispensational approach, which a lot of people use. Which is, the things you have seen, the things which are, and the things which shall be after this.
That's right.
Yeah.
The thing is that most people agree with that basic outline.
Okay.
But the argument comes when you get into those sections. And how do you divide the various judgments, the seals, the trumpets, the bowls?
Right. Yeah. Can you give a quick rundown of like what those sections generally cover?
So chapter 1 is the introduction. Chapters 2 and 3 are the things which are, so the church age and the letters to the 7 churches.
Okay.
Chapters 4 and 5 is the rapture and the church in heaven.
Okay.
Chapters 6 through 19 would be the tribulation, culminating with the second coming of Christ.
Okay.
Chapter 20 is the millennium, the final rebellion, and the great white throne judgment.
Right.
And then chapters 21 and 22 are the new heavens and the new earth and the new Jerusalem.
Okay, so that's a pretty widely accepted outline.
That's right.
But like you said, the devil's in the details.
Yeah.
So where does Brainard's interpretation start to differ from the
No.
norm?
Well, one of the big areas is when it comes to the judgments, the seals, trumpets, thunders, and bowls.
Okay.
Many interpretations follow what we call the back-to-back model, which is where each judgment series happens sequentially.
One after the other.
Okay.
But Brainard proposes what is called an overlapping model.
Overlapping, so they're kind of happening concurrently.
Exactly. They're happening concurrently.
Yeah.
So think of it like waves on the shore. You know, each wave builds upon the last one.
Okay.
And that's how Brainard sees these judgments.
Okay.
They each begin at their introduction and continue building in intensity until the second coming.
So they're not isolated events.
It's not like boop, 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 7 seals and then it's done.
Exactly.
Like, no. The seals start and then...
And it continues, and they just build in intensity.
They just build until the
second coming, yeah.
Second coming, okay.
So they're ongoing, escalating forces of judgment that progressively engulf the earth.
Oh, okay, I see.
So that's the basic.
Yeah, I like that image of the waves.
Yeah.
Because it gives you that sense of like building intensity and like you said, like engulfing the earth.
Right.
So that's an interesting image. I can see how that would...
And it really
Yeah.
provides for a more dramatic picture
Yeah.
of what the tribulation will be like.
Yeah, it definitely makes it feel more intense and kind of overwhelming.
It does?
In a sense.
That does.
So I'm curious, how does that perspective then help to resolve some of the things that don't seem to quite add up?
Yeah.
When you look at a strict
back-to-back interpretation.
Yeah.
One of the most prominent examples is the sixth seal.
Okay.
Described in Revelations 6.1-17.
Right.
And it depicts dramatic cosmic disturbances.
Yeah, like the sun turning black, the moon blood red.
That's right. The stars falling.
Yeah, stars falling, every mountain island vanishing.
Right.
So yeah, so pretty intense imagery there.
Pretty intense imagery. And if we place that event in the middle of the tribulation, as a back-to-back model would suggest,
right,
it raises a problem. How can the mountains and islands vanish again at the second coming?
Right, because there's
clearly more upheaval there.
Right,
it doesn't make sense for them to vanish twice.
Yeah.
So that's where...
kind of a chronological redundancy.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so Brainard's overlapping model provides a more coherent explanation.
Okay.
He argues that the events described in the sixth seal actually align with the second coming.
So he's shifting it from the middle to the end?
Just shifting it to the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And this is further supported by the concept of the great shaking.
Okay.
Mentioned in both Revelation 6.14 and 16.20.
Okay.
And both of those passages describe every mountain and island vanishing. And Brainard relying on Hebrews 12.26 and Haggai 2.6 emphasizes that there's only one great shaking of the heavens and the earth in the last days.
Okay, so it's not like two separate shaking events.
It's one single cataclysmic
shaking that happens at the
second coming.
And
that aligns perfectly with the imagery of the sixth seal. And it eliminates the need for the mountains and islands to disappear twice.
Right, I see.
Yeah.
So it's like he's kind of cleaning up the timeline a little bit and making it a little bit more cohesive.
It's more cohesive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like taking a puzzle that's been put together a little bit wrong and kind of rearranging a few pieces.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. It's like he's untangling a knotted thread.
Yeah.
Allowing the narrative to flow more smoothly.
I like that.
Yeah.
And, we were talking about this before we started recording, but it's interesting because he's not just kind of rearranging the timeline. He's actually highlighting a very specific truth about the nature of God's judgment during the tribulation.
Yeah.
But we'll have to dive into that.
In our next segment.
Yeah, in our next segment.
So we were talking about how Lee Brainard's overlapping model not only addresses these chronological inconsistencies, but it also allows for a more consistent literal interpretation of key passages.
Yeah. I'm always a little bit leery of interpretations that get too metaphorical, you know, like where you have to really stretch things to make them fit.
Yeah, you don't want to force things
right. into
a system.
So how does his model kind of allow for a more literal, straightforward reading?
We'll take, for example, Revelation 6.12:17, which is the sixth seal.
Okay.
And then also Revelation 11.15:19, which details the sounding of the seventh trumpet.
Okay.
Now, under the traditional back-to-back model, these passages often have to be interpreted metaphorically to avoid placing events that seem to describe the second coming and the establishment of God's kingdom in the middle of the tribulation.
Right, so it's like you're trying to force those.
Right, you're trying to force
end times events into the middle of the tribulation when it seems like they should be at the end.
It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But with the overlapping model, both of those passages can be understood literally as describing events that occur at the second coming.
Okay.
Which is precisely where they seem to fit most naturally.
Right, it's a more straightforward and I would even say elegant solution.
I agree.
It's like he's untangling a knot.
Yeah.
Allowing the narrative to flow smoothly.
Right.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, it brings a sense of clarity and coherence to the text. But beyond simply clarifying the timeline, Brainard's overlapping model also reveals a profound truth about the nature of God's judgment during the tribulation.
Oh, okay. So it's not just about getting the order right.
Right.
It's about understanding something deeper about
the nature of the judgments.
The judgments themselves. Okay. Tell me more about that.
Well, it highlights the relentless compounding nature of those judgments.
Okay.
You see, in the back-to-back model, each judgment has a defined beginning and end.
Right. It's like bam, bam, bam.
Right.
And then it's over.
But in Brainard's model, the judgments introduced by the seals, for example, aren't short-lived, isolated events.
Yeah.
They represent lasting and drastic changes to the world that persist until the very end.
So each seal doesn't just come and go. It actually adds a layer.
Another layer.
Of suffering or chaos or judgment.
Of suffering and chaos.
That builds upon the previous one.
Exactly. The first seal introduces the Antichrist's reign of conquest.
Okay.
And that continues until the second coming.
So it's not like he just pops up and then disappears?
No.
He's there the whole time?
The whole time. And his influence grows.
Wow.
And then you have the second seal, which unleashes war and violence.
Okay.
That persists.
It doesn't just go away.
It doesn't go away.
It keeps
building.
Okay. The third seal brings about famine.
Yeah.
A global crisis.
Right.
That doesn't subside.
Right. It's not like, oh, there was a famine.
Yeah.
And now it's gone.
Right.
It's like, no, the famine continues to
worsen.
Okay.
The fourth seal unleashes God's four sword judgments.
Right. The sword, hunger, death, and beasts. Yeah.
That's right. And all of these ravage the earth relentlessly.
So again, these are not just like one-time events.
No.
These are
ongoing
and escalating judgments.
Wow.
And then the fifth seal depicts the Jewish remnant enduring constant persecution.
Okay.
Not for a brief period, but for the entire duration of the tribulation.
So it's like wave after wave after wave.
Wave after wave.
Of judgment and suffering.
That's right.
Yeah. That definitely paints a much more...
It's a sobering reality.
Yeah, it's a sobering reality.
And it underscores the biblical concept of no escape during the day of the Lord.
Right, like Isaiah 24.18 and Amos 5.19.
That's right. They describe this time as one of inescapable judgment.
So you can't hide from it.
You can't hide from it.
You can't escape.
There's no escape.
Wow, it's a very intense picture.
It's intense, and it really emphasizes the severity and urgency of the situation.
I mean, if that's the case, then wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm curious about the sixth seal, though. Because we talked about these cosmic signs.
Right.
But you mentioned earlier that it actually encompasses more than just those signs.
It does.
So what else is going on there?
Well, this is another area where Brainard's interpretation diverges from the norm.
Okay.
He points out that the sixth seal actually extends to include all of Revelation chapter 7.
Okay, so there's a whole chapter.
A whole chapter
nestled within the sixth seal.
Within the sixth seal.
And a lot of people kind of miss.
A lot of people miss it because the seventh seal isn't opened until Revelation 8.1.
Right. So you
just kind of skip over it.
Skip over that whole section.
Right.
So what's going on in chapter 7?
Well, it includes the binding and eventual release of the 4 angels.
Okay.
Which correspond to the first 4 trumpets.
Okay.
It includes the sealing of the 144,000 Jewish believers for protection. And it also includes the appearance of the great multitude, those who are saved during the tribulation.
Right, so that's a lot packed into one seal.
It's a lot packed into one seal.
So how does Brainard make sense of all of that happening within the 6th seal?
Well, he argues that these elements are presented in a chiasmus.
Okay.
Which is a literary device that arranges elements in a myriad pattern.
Okay.
Like ABBA.
Okay, so it's not necessarily a strict chronological order.
That's right.
It's more of the
moral order.
Moral order.
It's highlighting certain themes and connections between the events.
So it's about understanding the overall message of the 6th seal.
That's right.
Not necessarily getting bogged down in like a minute-by-minute timeline.
Exactly. It's not about creating a strict chronology.
Okay.
It's about understanding the theological significance.
Okay, so it's a different way of reading it.
It is, and interestingly, he sees a similar dynamic at play with the 6th trumpet.
Oh, really? So
yeah.
The 6th trumpet also has this kind of...
Yes, it's expanded scope.
Encompasses a significant portion of Revelation, stretching from 9.13 to 11.13.
It includes the release of 4 angels bound at the Euphrates River.
Okay.
The sounding of the 7 thunders, which are mysteriously sealed.
Mm-hmm.
The warning about the climax of the mystery of God.
Okay.
And the close of the ministry of the 2 witnesses.
Wow. Okay, so both the 6th seal and the 6th trumpet are these...
multifaceted, complex events that span multiple chapters.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how understanding this is really key
to
grasping Brainard's whole interpretation.
It's crucial.
Yeah.
And this brings us to another significant implication of the overlapping model. It actually challenges one of the most popular views on the timing of the rapture.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll have to unpack that in the next segment.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're back, and you were just about to explain how Lee Brainard's overlapping model affects the timing of the rapture.
Right. Well, the popular pre-wrath rapture view positions the rapture after the signs of the 6th seal, but before the 7th seal. And this view depends on that traditional back-to-back model.
Right.
But as we've discussed, Brainard places those signs at the second coming. Yeah.
Not in the middle of the tribulation.
Right. So if those signs are at the second coming, there's no room for a pre-wrath rapture in between.
Exactly. And this forces pre-wrath proponents to reconsider their position. They'd either have to accept a post-tribulation rapture or just abandon that view altogether and embrace a pre-tribulation rapture.
Yeah. So Brainard's model really throws a wrench in the whole pre-wrath timeline.
It does.
That's pretty significant.
It is. And it also leads us to another interesting point of contention. The timing of the 2 witnesses.
Ah, yes. The 2 witnesses, their appearance and ministry have always caused a lot of debate.
Yeah, a lot of... How does Brainard's interpretation affect our understanding of their role and timing?
Right.
Well, because he places the 7th trumpet at the second coming.
Right.
And the 2 witnesses are killed right before the 7th trumpet.
Right.
That means their ministry has to take place during the second half of the tribulation.
The second half. That's different from what a lot of people believe, right?
It is the common views that they appear in the first half.
But Brainard's model changes that.
I imagine that generates some pushback. So what are some of the arguments against placing the 2 witnesses in the second half of the tribulation?
Well, one common argument is that all of Israel will be in hiding during the second half of the tribulation, making the presence of the 2 witnesses unnecessary, because if the faithful are hidden, who would they be ministering to?
Right, that makes sense.
But Brainard points to passages like Revelation 12.14 and Zechariah 14 that indicate that not all believers will be hidden, and that some will still be in Jerusalem at the second coming.
So there would still be people for them to minister to.
Exactly. It's not a completely deserted landscape.
Okay.
And Brainard argues that God wouldn't leave the world without a strong witness during its darkest hour, especially when facing the Antichrist's deceiving miracles.
Right. It makes sense that God would provide a powerful witness like he did with Elijah and Moses.
Right. And Brainard suggests that the 2 witnesses will offer an even more potent demonstration of God's power during the second half of the tribulation.
Okay, so they'll be challenging the Antichrist head on.
Exactly, challenging his claims and providing hope to those who remain faithful.
It's like a spiritual showdown in the middle of all the chaos.
That's a good way to put it.
So if anyone wants to dive deeper into this and learn more about Lee Brainard's work, where should they go?
They can check out his YouTube channel, Soothkeep.
Soothkeep. Okay, so we'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Right.
For anyone who's fascinated by biblical prophecy and wants to really understand this stuff.
Absolutely. He does a fantastic job of explaining his interpretations and providing biblical support for his views.
Yeah, well, it's been really interesting learning about his take on the order of events in Revelation.
Yeah, it's definitely thought-provoking.
It is, and it's a good reminder that we should always be studying the Bible and trying to understand God's plan for the future.
Absolutely. And whether you agree with all of Brainard's conclusions or not, his work challenges us to think critically about the book of Revelation and to wrestle with its complexities.
It's not about blindly accepting what someone else says.
No, it's about engaging with the text ourselves.
Right, asking questions, seeking truth.
That's right. And sometimes that means challenging our own assumptions and exploring new perspectives.
Yeah, well said. It's been a fascinating deep dive, and I hope our listeners have come away with a deeper appreciation for the book of Revelation.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I just want to remind everyone that even though Revelation talks about judgment, it's ultimately a book about hope.
Yeah.
It points us toward the ultimate victory of God and the establishment of his eternal kingdom.
That's a good point to end on. So for all of you listening out there, keep seeking truth, and may your own deep dives be filled with wonder and discovery until next time.
Thank you for watching, and feel free to subscribe or take a look at some of these other videos. And always remember Matthew 6:33, but seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. Until next time, have a great day.